How many of you are from manufacturing companies? Oh, excellent. Where are the rest of you from? Oh, how many from consulting? Oh, that's bad. You should do something. No, seriously, I don't think there's anything inherently evil in consulting. I think that without owning something over an extended period of time, like a few years, where one has a chance to take responsibility for one's recommendations, where one has to see one's recommendations through all action stages and accumulate scar tissue for the mistakes and pick oneself up off the ground and dust oneself off, one learns a fraction of what one can. You're coming in and making recommendations and not owning the results, not owning the implementation, I think is a fraction of the value and a fraction of the opportunity to learn and get better. And so what you do get a broad cut at companies, but it's very thin. It's like a picture of I'm a vegetarian, so I won't use.
Hi. I have a meeting in about an hour from now. So what we just watched was a talk given by Steve Jobs back in 1992 at MIT about consulting. And there he makes a statement about consultants that they don't own what they do, meaning generally consultants come into a project or business to give advice or recommendations on technologies or strategies on how they should do their business. And they don't stick long enough to see their successes or failures in the long run. So according to Steve Jobs, consultants lack the overall picture or the three-dimensional view of the entire business. But that's about consultants. What about software engineers or developers that work for these consulting firms or companies? Since my graduation, over the last 2 years, I have worked for 2 different consulting firms, and this has been my honest experience and thoughts on being a software engineer at these consulting firms, and I might not completely agree with Steve Jobs on this one. Generally, if you work in IT or tech, the kind of companies that you can work for or the kind of companies that hire you comes into 4 categories: startups, big tech, product-based companies, and consulting firms. I have both friends and families that work in each of these categories, and these are the things that I found interesting working for consulting firms. There is no need to job hop if work is not exciting. All consulting firms generally work in a variety of industries like insurance, banking, automotive, telecommunication. And over the past 2 years, I have mainly worked for service-based companies and some automotive clients. And working for a consulting firm usually allows you to switch projects and expose yourself to new tools and new team. I'm sure you can do this in other companies too. But in consulting, when you switch a project, that usually comes with switching your client. That means the new project that you're joining will have new tools, processes, and an entire new team in place. And this is comparable to switching to a new job. In other companies, you might have the opportunity to switch project, but that's usually an internal transfer and the working environment might be more or less the same. But of course, not everyone likes the idea of switching your working environment that often, but it's a very nice add-on to have when you feel rustic. Learn to work with business people. I recently started on a new project at my work, and the job of my current team is to integrate all the data warehouses and other cloud services of clients. Basically make all their services talk to each other. And on my current team, we are 6 to 7 engineers, 2 product owners, 1 senior manager, and a scrum master. All these engineers are either from my company or another consulting firm or from the client side. These kind of setups sometimes lead to a conflict of interest Sometimes the POs won't understand why a task that seems so trivial takes so much time, and they want us to finish features as fast as possible. And we as engineers try to build the best solution possible, keep technical debt to minimum, and have a sustainable solution in the long run. But building solutions this way costs a lot more time, and time equates to money. So often we have to find a trade-off between building the best solution the fastest way that is also maintainable in the future. From this experience, here are a few valuable things that I learned over the last 2 years. One, how to easily explain difficult technical concepts. Whenever I talk to a non-technical person, I try to keep my words very simple in a way that the other person understands what I'm trying to convey. That does not mean that you have to dumb it down. You just have to get to a place where both the parties are on the same page. The more you do it, the better you get at it. Two, how to say no. Generally, the work relation in a team is pretty good, but sometimes POs or PMs try to squeeze in that extra amount of work. So you have to learn when to say no, because when they give you that extra work, you might be delaying a very important feature. So you have to voice your opinion and say no when it matters. Three, delight the client. Yes, of course, you have to learn how to say no when it matters, but also you can take that extra step or two every now and then to make your client happy, especially if you're building a new feature or a component that many users are going to use. If you put in that extra step or give your own spin to it, it will show and it might make the client happy. 4. Learn to trust your technical abilities. Sometimes the client might ask you to solve a problem, and I try to limit saying I don't know. Instead, I try to give a direction, and I try to be honest by saying this is what I know and this is what I don't know. And if it's a problem that I entirely don't know, what I try to do is idea bouncing, meaning you try to think out loud and say this is how I am thinking, and maybe client might pick up one or two things from here and there and build a solution from that. Work-life balance exists. We all know the rumor, in consulting you will work 60 hours per week and have a work-work balance instead of a work-life balance. This is not always true, at least for software engineers. I can't speak for other roles. It's definitely less time pressured than compared to a startup. That doesn't mean you don't have strict deadlines or time limits. It all depends on what kind of project or client you're working on. Related to work-life balance, one thing I quite enjoy in consulting firms is the break that you get between projects. Like I mentioned before, you have the opportunity to switch projects. That doesn't mean that you're the one who chooses always to switch projects. Sometimes you get a break of somewhere between 2 weeks to 1 month before you finish a project and start on the next one. And there are also times where you finish a project this week and the next week you're already onboarding on the next one. But more often than not, you might get at least 2 weeks gap between the projects, and this is a good break. You can use this time to upskill yourself or take a new certification or learn a new technology that you have always wanted to learn and never had the time for. Or you can just take it easy and be prepared for the next project that's coming. And this is such a luxury that I enjoy having in consulting firms. And I would say you might not get this same experience, let's say if you're working for a startup environment. Traveling is actually not that bad. I graduated and joined consulting post-pandemic, so I have not had the full throttle travel experience from these consulting firms, but I have had few short travels over the last 2 years. To be honest, traveling wasn't that bad. Everything was taken care for me. The air tickets and hotel was booked for me. I had an amazing breakfast at the hotel every day. For lunch and dinner, I ate out. Every day my room and bed were cleaned. I had a sauna and a swimming pool. I didn't mind that 1 week of traveling, but I could totally see that how this could be cumbersome if this were to happen every week. But I'm totally in for a hybrid model in the future where you get to travel a few times a year or at least once a month. And that's totally reasonable for me. it only has positive effects for employees and planet Earth. And that's been my experience working as a software engineer for these consulting firms over the past few years. And honestly, it's not as bad as everyone makes it to be. I hope this made sense and I gave some clarity to people who might be on the edge of considering working for a consulting firm. And that being said, I think it's about time for my meeting, and let me get to it.